What is going on, Hive? How is everybody doing on this Monday, June 16th, 2025? Sounds like the audio is coming in loud and clear. I have DevilsAdvocates backstage. He'll be up here in a couple of minutes, and I am looking forward to talking to him tonight. We always have great off-the-cuff conversations. Today, we actually decided about a couple specific topics, so we will be getting into those, specifically the DoorDash driver, which has been probably the most talked about thing in this case, I think, on a massive scale that we've seen in quite some time. So we will be going into that. I have enhanced audio that I did myself that I will be playing of that conversation with the DoorDash driver and the cop. That body cam footage had a lot of white noise. I was able to clean it up. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bring up our guest tonight every Monday night, 7 p.m. Central. Devil's Advocate is going to be on the stream, and here he is.
Hey.
What is going on, man? How are you doing?
I'm good. I was terrified when you had somebody that said the family's in the room. I'm so not family friendly. But anyways, I will do my best.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. They know what they signed up with. Usually, I feel like we're pretty good about it. Sometimes Sammy T gets a little bit fired up, but that's all right. What is new with you, man? How have you been doing?
I'm doing well. Actually, I've been making plans today for trying to figure out how I'm going to go to Boise and attend the trial. I've been working out with my wife, starting to do some pre-planning on that and figuring out what the logistics are and stuff. So I watched the hearing today, talking about the rules of order of the court and all that good stuff, and kind of getting a handle on how that's going to look. So did a lot of that, watching again the video of the DoorDash thing and that whole monster. So I'm excited to get your thoughts. I can't wait to hear the isolated video or audio that you have, because I don't know about you, but I got really interested in what was going on in the background as well, with the cop and Jimmy talking about the meth and all that stuff in the truck. And I was like, I was so focused on the front conversation. I was like, man, I'm missing a major conversation in the back. Anyway, yeah. So I'm excited.
Yeah, so the enhanced audio is just of where she talks about Bryan Kohberger, because if I in the video, yeah, but I agree, there is definitely a lot going on in that video, which we will get into. That's pretty cool that you're going to go to the trial.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it my best shot. I have a pretty good plan started, so I think we're gonna pull that off.
Dude, that's awesome. That's badass. And then that trial, or not the trial, the stream that you watched today about the upcoming trial, was that an old hearing that was now just finally streamed live for the first time, or is this brand new stuff? Because I saw a couple conflicting things, that it was saying that it was an older, already recorded thing that now just became public. I could be way wrong on that, and so forget it.
I had the impression it was a live feed from what was happening today, but so yeah, I mean, in fact, what I heard today, I thought was some new stuff. So okay. I think it's new, but
no, that's fine. Like I said, I could be way wrong.
Me too.
Well, anyways, either way though, I want to hear about.
Uh-oh, you froze up for me.
Sorry, chat. I think my air just kicked on. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. Devil's Advocate, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, either way, I was going to say I only was able to watch 5 or 10 minutes of that. So why don't you fill us in on what it is that you heard and kind of what the dynamic of it was?
So yeah, I mean, it was a bunch of Hippler giving both sides a clear understanding of the process of voir dire, how they're going to do the voir dire process, what's going to be allowed in the court, his rules about, he doesn't want to hear any argument during the opening, so he wants nothing argumentative during the opening of both sides. There's a lot of rules. He's going to try to keep the jury from not being sequestered until the last minute possible, and he expects at some point they may have to be sequestered. The trial is set to start August 11th, hopefully wrapped up by November so that everybody's home for Christmas. But there's a few holidays in there. He basically said that if the jury is not sequestered, that they will take the day off for the holidays that are up there. There's 1 or 2 days in between. But if they are sequestered, they're going to keep going. The court's going to go during holidays because he doesn't want to waste the jury's time who have nothing to do while they're on holiday. And, so anyways, there was a lot of stuff to unpack there, honestly. And I do have notes we could get into more if you wanted to. But that was kind of the gist. It was just more of like, rules of order and how it's going to work. And as we move forward to the actual jury selection coming up in July.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't we get into a little bit of your notes, and then we could go through the Hive Mind finds quick, and then we can then get into the DoorDash driver. So why don't we talk about what was said today?
Yeah. So my key takeaways, and I don't want to dominate the conversation, but my key takeaways is they were talking about the alternative suspect stuff some more, and so he was giving deadlines for basically for Ann Taylor to finish submitting evidence for the alternative perpetrators that she submitted, and time for the prosecution and setting deadlines for when they were going to have to fully respond and whether or not they accept it. One of the things that he wanted to make sure when Ann Taylor submitted her full evidence for alternative suspects or alternative perpetrators, as they called it, that she also explained why it is she feels it's admissible in court, which I take to mean, what is different and why is this coming up now and why didn't this come up 2 years ago kind of thing. So if you've got something that's truly new, not only do you have to tell me what you've got, but why it is that you think it should be admissible in court now and why we haven't talked about it before. So that was pretty interesting. And I did look at some new documents got filed back and forth today about that very thing. Everything's sealed as they're fighting. The prosecution doesn't look like they want the defense to submit their alternate perpetrator evidence. They want to try and stop it from happening. They're saying, nope, you can't do that. So they're making an argument that basically, I think, is trying to say, not good enough. You're coming too late to the party with this stuff. That's my interpretation of what's happening there. I thought it was interesting. A key takeaway is at one point they talked about Ann Taylor admitted, maybe this was knowledge everybody had, that they have 3 private investigators that are working for the defense team. So they want seats in the jury for their private investigators to be there as well. There was a lot of talk about the broadcast, which I thought was interesting again, because if, from my perspective, if I'm going to participate, I thought, well, if they're going to broadcast this on the internet, I'm not going to drive 4 hours to go watch it in person if I can just sit at my house in my underwear and watch the show, kind of thing. But yeah, it's my understanding it's going to be a little bit more complex than that. And again, I feel like I need to let you have time for words because I got so many notes. So I feel like maybe I should let you have some interaction first.
You're good. And I see people in the chat that were kind of saying that this is this might have been from a month ago, the last hearing. But regardless, it's fine. It's good to talk on. So whether or not it was streamed again and it was, restreamed or whatever it may be, either way, this is important stuff to talk about.
To be fair, I think one of the things that made me think it was an earlier broadcast is they talked about a date that's already passed. And I'm like, how can you be talking about a date that's already passed? So I did catch that, but I was like, a lot of the stuff that just came out sounded new to me. And in fact, when I saw all the filings back and forth, I thought, oh, this is related. So I kind of got mixed up. So maybe it was, I think again, with that later date that I heard that had passed as an indicator that, it might've been a rebroadcast, but. Yeah, but it was new stuff for me on that. So I did get a lot, and I picked a lot of little pieces out of it that I thought were interesting.
Every time that I look at this screen here, Devil's Advocates, everything is motion to seal, motion to seal, motion to seal, order sealing, order sealing, order sealing.
Right. We're back to that. Yeah.
I mean, guys, at what point do we realize, it's just it's not homicide language. It doesn't seem like rather simple filings. I'm almost starting to believe the secrecy, the sealing. Sorry, I guess maybe secrecy might not be the right word because there's going to be people that say, stuff about, well, we don't know all the facts. It's super important that nobody knows about it. Yada, yada, yada. Well, it's not the defense leaking stuff. It's the state leaking it. So part of me thinks, is the state keeping it sealed so that they can leak a certain variation of the narrative out and continue this trial by media? We obviously know about the Dateline. There's the Amazon series that's coming up. So anyways.
Well, one of the things I thought, it's interesting to think that this was a rebroadcast, because that makes me wonder, did it get broadcast before the Dateline piece or not? Because one of the things that I thought was really interesting that Hippler said, which was kind of like, I wrote it down exactly and I'm not finding it in my notes, but basically the prosecution was trying to argue that, hey, there may be some undercover officers who don't want to be broadcast on TV and don't want their face shown on the broadcast, and they wanted to have that basically hidden. And Hippler's response was something to the sense of, if anybody's going to be hidden from camera, it better be really, really good, because the only way people are going to accept the verdict in this case is if they can see the evidence. And so he didn't want, I mean, granted, we're under seal on everything right now, but it was interesting to hear Hippler say, America's not going to buy the verdict one way or another if they don't get to see the evidence. So once the trial starts, it should be open season for everybody to see everything. But
yeah, well, I mean, so what does that tell you about his temperature check on the public's perception? I mean, you would have to be living under a rock to not see the, I guess, like, bubbling of people aren't gonna believe the ruling either way. You know what I mean? This case is already shot. He could be proven completely innocent and exonerated. There's still going to be people that are going to say, no, they got it wrong, or vice versa. Like, I got to be honest with myself. If he gets convicted without some magical, 100% proof evidence, I'm probably going to be like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. So I have to also be fair in that regard. But the fact that Hippler is saying that says that he probably already senses that.
Yeah, it's interesting, because he doesn't, he's always seemed to be, Hippler's always, in my opinion, he's always seemed to be pro-prosecution and really doesn't give a shit to hear the defense's argument. And now he seems to be much more, he appeared in this, and again, I don't know how old this broadcast is now, because he appeared to be far more down the middle and tolerant of both sides, instead of acting like he's bored every single time the defense opens their mouth. So it's almost like he got a gut check or something like that, where somebody said, hey, you're looking like you're completely biased towards the prosecution. Maybe you should tone it down, because he looked like he was far more down the middle in the case. And his statement about nobody's gonna believe the verdict if they don't get to see the evidence suggests that he realizes that, and like you said, it doesn't matter which way it goes. When this is over, people aren't going to accept the verdict. Yeah. And it's tough for me. I have to add this aside. So this is tough for me. Like, I feel like we should, at some level, accept whatever the court's decision is. The whole idea is it's a jury of your peers. And so we're supposed to trust that our peers have made a good, sound decision, and then be content with their answer. And yet, this case, perhaps more than any, maybe Luigi will be the same kind of situation in that case, but people are probably not going to accept the verdict. And I don't know how to feel about that, because even I don't want to go on there. Let's say that I think that something was sketchy in the trial and that he didn't get a fair shake and they convict him on wrongful thing. It's going to be hard for me to go out there and say, I'll never accept the verdict, because I either do or I don't believe in the American legal system. So if a jury of his peers found him guilty, do I really, am I going to stick my neck out there and say I don't accept the verdict? I mean, I have to believe in the system. So I don't even know how to feel about it.
Well, you have to believe in the system until you have enough credible kind of data points to look at and say, has DNA evidence always been 100% proven right? Has DNA evidence ever gotten a case wrong? Has anybody ever been convicted and sentenced for murder and not committed that murder? Yeah. And then It's so funny, because talk about the perception of the public when, I mean, it's like you've probably had more experience in this, where like you've seen somebody get convicted and everybody's like, they got the right guy. And then you see them get exonerated years later with different evidence. It's not necessarily that people even feel bad. They're now like excited for like this plot twist, instead of like, no, the bigger thing is that the justice system effed up and somebody spent decades in prison, wrongfully. So, yeah, man, that's crazy. And we can start to dive into these hive mind finds, because I see people talking about also, the best friend or the friend of Bryan Kohberger that has started to talk about kind of who he is as a person, call out some creators. Lucky for us, Devil's Advocates, we are not on the list. So, but yeah, so let's get into it. Before I do, those other two Hive Mind finds. So we were talking on our stream last night, Devil's Advocate, about how the creator Translucent not only got the body cam footage, but of the DoorDash driver being arrested.
Yeah.
She had also posted stuff about how Bryan was a subscriber to AMS, which is like a star-gazing meteor. Like I forget the exact acronym for AMS, but it's like where you pay a yearly fee to get updates on where these astral events are going to be happening. And there was the torrid meteor shower that night at 4:56 a.m. on November 13th, where so now we started thinking, do you think Ann Taylor would just literally come out in one of the highest profile murder cases in recent history and say, my client was stargazing without some sort of proof? And maybe they can prove the cell tower data. And I know Mama Todd is in here. She's a local out there. She says you lose service on that road. And you look at the narrative of Steve saying he turned his phone off. Well, it's like, did he, or did it just go out of service? And he can say all this stuff. Like, why would he leak that unless it's to continue to frame a certain narrative? So could you imagine if Bryan Kohberger has photos of this torrid meteor shower on his phone? And I just look at like how they've said, look at these photos on his phones. Look at this trophy picture. Look at this. It's like, well, wait till you see a picture that proves him completely innocent, because there's clearly enough of this event that went on. Here is what was captured that night. I mean, that's crazy, dude.
Right.
I'm not going to lie. If I saw that coming at me from that angle, I would have probably ducked and covered and been like, holy shit, this is the end. Doesn't that look like something's, you know what I mean? So like, if that's the case, do you think that that would be enough evidence to prove it?
Wow. I mean, it's hard, we've all heard the whole, it was a cloudy night. So give me a break that he's out stargazing because it was a cloudy night kind of thing. But I mean, I don't know how the cloud coverage was around Portland versus around, Eastern Washington, Oregon, or in Idaho at that point. But yeah, super interesting find, because if there was a celestial and the timing, right, is perfect. I mean, the timing is perfect, right? It's perfect. It's like, I would be out there doing that, kind of thing. And in fact, you got to remember, Kohberger made a kind of comment early on when they did the arrest, was like, well, they're going to know where I was at. I had my cell phone. They're going to be able to follow my cell phone. So it's clear he was aware that his cell phone would be tracked and didn't think it was a problem, which tells you something, because if he already knew that his cell phone was going to come into play here, why would you take it to a quadruple homicide scene? It makes no sense.
Well, exactly. And I think Nick, also to your point about like the cloud conditions, it's like, yeah, something tells me you're going to see that through the clouds.
Right.
You know, I mean, for God's sakes, look at how bright that is. And so, anyways, I find that very interesting. And then I think too, like the whole gas station footage of the Elantra, I literally thought to myself, okay, if I don't know anybody in town, okay, like we know the Dateline thing for whatever it's worth, like the people at that pool party who everyone just so happened to say he was the weirdest guy ever, right, said that they saw him walking up the hill and they made it seem like, oh, he's following them, when really he doesn't know anybody, and he could have been going to a higher vantage point for less light pollution to see the sky. But I started thinking about like the whole rumored gas station footage of his car on camera and all that.
Yep.
I thought about myself, if I don't know anybody in town and I liked to look at these type of events in the sky, who's to say I wouldn't stop at the gas station, get a Gatorade, get a bag of beef jerky, and head out there.
Right. You're going to be there a while.
So anyways, now this next one, Devil's Advocate, have you seen this video yet?
Nope.
All right, chat. So this is one of Bryan Kohberger's friends. It's a 6-minute clip. I think the best approach for this is to just let it play because he gets pretty fired up. I don't know about his language, so I think it was Sandra who's watching this with her family in the living room. I don't know. So here's like a disclaimer for what it's worth. And Devil's Advocate, can you hear it or no?
Yes.
Okay.
We're here to talk about Idaho 4. I'm here in Poconos, Pennsylvania, where I live. Everything I say on here is my opinion. It has nothing to do with any other content creators' opinions. I don't know if their opinions are their own. I have to say that just so I don't get like in trouble. But there's a lot of gaslighters and a lot of killer channels out there that are making things up. And they don't even know the guy personally. That they're blaming all this on. Now, I do. And if you guys, if anyone out there, if these people knew this guy personally, Mr. Kohberger or Bryan, they would know there's no fucking way in hell that he did this. He's not physically or mentally capable of doing anything like this. That is total fucking bullshit. The kid doesn't have a violent bone in his body. He's very non-confrontational. Me, I'm confrontational. I'm an Aries. We're on April 14th. And it's obvious. But these guys out here like Gray Hughes, Tony Bruschi, fucking Drunk Parrot or whatever the fuck his name is. The one victim's father, I'm not going to say his name, but we all know who I'm talking about. Now, these fucking morons are just pushing this fucking narrative, and I think that victim's father is almost being paid by the university to do this. I also think it's pretty funny how ever since the whole thing came out about the leak and Judge Hippler not being happy about it, he lawyered up right away. And we haven't heard any more bullshit from him since. He hasn't been out there on channels spouting this fucking bullshit. So I find that a little odd. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was him. And he went around and said this stuff like, if Bryan does get off, how did he word it? He's going to be dealt with. Like, yeah, right, you short little fat fucker. You ain't dealing with nothing. You're not going to do nothing. Especially with me here. You're not going to do nothing. There are channels out there that do have an open mind and try to bring factual information out. And they actually go through and they read the court documents. And they go down through and they watch the hearings that were publicized. And they kind of relay that out rather than just speculating or pushing a narrative like Dateline or Megyn Kelly, Skeletor. I made this little chart because if you notice, most of the dudes that are guilders, they all have kind of one thing in common, or two things really. They're short and they're fat. It's almost like they're upset and they want to put someone in a firing squad because they're mad about it. Well, you're probably saying, William, why are you body shaming? I'm not really. I'm just telling the truth. I'm spitting facts here. I'm over here in fact.
Okay, we need to get him on the stream. Okay, I'm putting out a request and a task to the Hive, and I will also complete this task. We need to go onto this video or find his profile and get in contact with him. I believe his name is William. Now, while myself or Devil's Advocate or Phoenix is not included on the list of people who are quote unquote the open-minded or whatever, I mean, obviously this stream is newer to YouTube. It's just a month and some change old. However, I'm glad that I am not on the short and fat list. So I will say that is more of a positive. So yeah, Phoenix Talks just put his username up there. Anyways, we'll see if he'd be open to it. I think we got probably the most open-minded chat in the game. Wouldn't you agree, Devil's Advocate?
Yeah. We got some great people. That's for sure.
We got to get him on here with Sammy T and let those two just riff. That'd be incredible. So anyways, I'll let this keep playing.
actual information, if you can see this, and if I missed any channels, I do apologize, because there are some really good ones out there and people that I think are doing a good job with their content. And over here in the fat and unimportant section, we got the usual suspects over here.
This guy's
Same
killing
guys.
me.
These fuckers putting out content. Some of these channels, like Tony here, Tony's fat ass puts out a fucking new video like every 4 hours. He also puts them out on the Karen Reed thing, saying she's guilty nonstop. Like he kind of alternates in between Karen Reed and Bryan Kohberger. That guy is a fucking moron, and I don't know, he probably has a couple followers. But people who embed in this and believe the guilters, they embed in the first information they hear. And it's usually people that don't have as much common sense as some of us.
Facts.
And it's very difficult to convince them of the truth, even if actual factual evidence, you just really can't convince them because their mind is made up like that. It's like a conflictive bias is what it is. But take the facts from someone that actually knows. And I was also a U.S. Marine for 4 years when I was in Afghanistan. And I did on my tour in combat in 2005 there. I know a few things about K-bars and bayonets, and I know that I wouldn't be able to go into a place and unalive 4 adults like that and not have my DNA everywhere. And
okay, that's pretty powerful. He's a combat Marine from 2005, and he's saying he knows a thing or two about K-bars, and he wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And this is your first time watching this, Devil's Advocate? There's a couple.
It is. Yeah. Very cool stuff.
All right.
not suffer a black eye or like gouges from them scratching, because they fought for their life. They just didn't lay there and say, "Oh, kill me." I'm just going to lay here and let you do it. Plus, with their DNA all over me, my car, my fucking apartment, it's impossible for that to happen. But like I said in the beginning, it's impossible that Bryan Kohberger did this. The kid is no killer, plain and simple. And people need to wake the fuck up and realize what's going on here. Stop following the fucking guilders. All they're doing is rotting your brain. Like me or hate me, I never said truth was going to be simple. But I'm just telling you what I know. Whether through experience or from actually knowing people personally. And it's about time someone came out and said this.
So there is another video as well that he has out that I have, and this one's a little bit shorter. Do you want to play this and then discuss Devil's Advocate? Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm just going to talk more about IDAHO 4 and Bryan, because there's a lot of people out there that talk that don't even know Bryan personally, and I kind of feel like if you don't know him personally, then you really shouldn't be making all these opinions and assumptions about this guy if you've never met him. That makes no sense to me. People like Tony Bruschi, the fucking drunk parrot guy, Gray Hughes. Talk about three fucking fat douchebags, that just, I don't know, they're mad at the world. They want to kill someone. They want to put this guy in front of the firing squad who they never met before in their life. They want to fucking kill this guy. Why? Because they're pissed because they can't get fucking laid? Or because they look the way they do? Fucking fat and out of shape? That's their own fucking fault.
Oh, man.
Bryan is fucking harmless. I mean, anyone that fucking would ever meet him, and they would be trying to be told that he did his fucking crime, they would just bust out laughing. That fucking kid, he doesn't have a mean bone in his body. He's not like me. I'm fucking mean. And then this whole thing out with the DoorDash driver now saying that she saw, reports coming out that she saw Bryan there. Let me tell you something. If You saw the body cam footage of that night, that DoorDash driver. She was like a mess. She acted like she was high on meth. She was as high as she was is whenever you're at the stages of like paranoia and imagining things. And it's also a proven fact that law enforcement, they'll take people that are in trouble. I mean, they'll go right to the jail. And they'll cut deals with people to just make up shit, to testify for them, to get out of jail or to get out of trouble. They do shit like that all the fucking time. Look at the Zach and Dylan Adams case over that Holly Bobo girl down there in Tennessee. What those TBI agents did. You know, they got a guy who was in jail and got him to lie. That's all coming out now. They're getting a new trial. Those boys need to let them the fuck out. And those TBI agents ought to do 10 years in fucking prison and see how it feels. But we can't let this shit keep happening, to people. And it happens around the country all the time. These fucking counties, judges, prosecutors, law enforcement, a lot of times these prosecutors and judges, and if you have a paid public, or not a paid, but a public defender, they already know what's going to happen to you before you even go there. They've already talked about it. It's a fucked up mess. Our whole justice system is. But I'll be damned if I'm going to stand by and let fucking Bill Thompson's fat ass, along with that fucking fat cow Ashley Jennings, railroad fucking a friend of mine, a kid that I've known forever, who's fucking like the most harmless kid. I'll be damned if I'm going to let them railroad him into taking a fall for this shit. That's not going to happen. Not on my fucking watch. I stand up for my friends. I believe friendship is one of the most important things to me. Like, I'm an Aries. I was born April 14th. I'm all about friendship, passion, love. That's like what drives me in life. But I stand up for my friends, and Brian's not around right now to stand up for himself to these fucking guilders like Tony Bursky or Drunk Fucking Parrot or Down Centric Talk Show, whatever you call them. So I'll fucking do it for them. I have no issue with that. And if anyone would have a problem with it, 526 Furnace Road, Millhall, PA, 17751. It's not that hard to find. I don't call them fucking cops. I know, bitch. So that's the end.
So, all right, let's unpack that. And I want to talk about this comment right here by Fireball saying this is really dumb. A bear doesn't have to tell you it's a bear. This guy's a joke, waste. Well, you know what I say to you, Fireball, is that if you were on the trial and on the hook for a firing squad and nobody has had your back, I would hope that you would want some of your friends to come out there and maybe have your back a little bit. And for the first time in over 2 years, put a narrative out there that sheds something on your name that's not you're a loner, incel, serial killer, psychopath who doesn't get chicks, is the weirdest person ever, and then killed 4 people. So while I respect your opinion on a bear doesn't have to tell people it's a bear, okay, are there situations where a bear might have to do, kind of flex and show you that it's a bear? I mean, this guy's a combat veteran Marine who says he knows a thing or two about K-bars and that he couldn't even unalive these 4 people. The timeline makes no sense in the case. Bryan Kohberger hasn't gotten to defend his name one time. So I don't think that what this gentleman did is a waste. If anything, I think it's probably overdue. I think a lot of his friends and family were intimidated by the massive in sync narrative put around him where it almost makes you feel like you can't speak out about it because now you're going to get looped up in it. So I actually will tip my hat to this guy right here for coming out and defending his friend. So his username looks to be William127. Again, Hive, if anybody gets in contact with him, I'd love to have him on the stream. But yeah, so Fireball, I see your point about a bear doesn't have to tell somebody he's a bear. However, I would hope somebody would do this for me, and I know that I would do that for somebody else. So anyways.
Yeah, it's funny. I hope that people understand sarcasm, because I use sarcasm a lot and not everybody gets sarcasm. And so I gotta wipe the enormous amount of sarcasm off of me that's sticking to me as I say, this guy can't be credible because I thought Kohberger didn't have any friends. Like I thought the whole narrative was that he couldn't have had an accomplice, whatever, because he has no friends whatsoever. So, this obviously, guys, can't be right because Kohberger doesn't have any friends. And again, that's total sarcasm. I don't mean that, but it's just funny because again, if you're a guilter or you're a person who's decided already what's happened in this case, your narrative is Kohberger has no friends. He hates everybody. He's a loner, and then you got somebody sticking up for him, and it's like, oh, that can't be true.
Right. Well, I totally agree, and I think Jill also hit the nail on the head. You want to talk about a bear? Look at SG. Look at these other guys. So whether that was your point or not, like I said, I try to not put people on blast. I hope you can see how I kind of did both, where I see your point about the bear, not telling people it's bear. But I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like what this guy did. He's clearly, I think he probably got to the point where the last straw broke the camel's back, and he's like, F it, I'm doing it. And also, here's my address, which is, I mean, that's crazy. So,
right.
Anyways, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, devil's advocate, I would hope that if I was ever in that situation, somebody would do that for me. And, I guess that's my point. That's my 2 cents on that. So,
yeah. No, good
all right.
stuff.
So now here is the, DoorDash driver. This is the clip where she talks about seeing Bryan Kohberger at the scene. I just made this audio about 20 minutes prior to the stream. So if you did happen to see it on my TikTok, but I got rid of all the white noise stuff. So let me get out of this and let me put the volume all the way up. And here we go.
My doctor, please, yes, they're all diagnosed. Okay. I have PTSD. I have depression. I have anxiety. My husband murdered in front of me. He shot 9 times. Our friend.
Where did that happen?
In Moscow.
In Moscow? When was that?
Before me.
Who was your husband?
Charles and Michael, you shot me with it.
And
then now I have to testify. So yeah, because I'm a DoorDash driver, so yeah.
You have to testify in which murder?
Murder case.
Oh.
I'm a DoorDash driver, so
Okay. So you think it's all of those issues that make it look like you're under the influence of drugs? Okay.
Hey, Bertie, I think your sound's off.
Is that better?
Yeah.
All right. What do you think about that? I'll let you go first.
Well, you didn't catch the part that I was thinking you were going to catch. So I'm trying to see. I'd rather you tell me exactly what part you were focusing on, because I was actually kind of expecting you to catch a little different part. So, but I do have thoughts about the whole thing. So.
Yeah, well, that was the part where I felt like it just kind of clearly stated. She's like, I was the DoorDash driver. I saw Bryan. I got to testify, for the murder of the college girls.
Yeah.
Somebody brought up a good point in the chat, where it sounded like she was scared, which I think she was. I do think she was for sure having some sort of. She was under the influence of something, right? I mean, the sniffing was driving me crazy listening to that too. I saw a couple of people talking about it. But if, the emotion outside of just potentially being under the influence, like there could be an aspect of, let's say she knows she has to testify, where who knows if her brain is kind of logically thinking in this manner, but is she like, oh shit, I just screwed the pooch on this. Now I got drug charges. I was just arrested. I'm supposed to testify. I'm going to be discredited immediately.
Yeah, the part that I, I don't know if I got suppressed and you did have it recorded, but the part that I remember really, really queuing in on was the way she said it, the way I remembered. I don't know if you have this still that you can get that clip up, but she says, yep, I'm the DoorDash driver. Yep, I was the DoorDash driver. And after she says, I have to testify in a murder case. And she's like, which one? And she says, the one with the college kid. And she says, because I was the DoorDash driver. Yep, I was the DoorDash driver. Yep, she's said it 3 times. And then she says, I saw Bryan. Mm-hmm. It's really mixed up. And that was like, what do you mean? What's really mixed up? She's like, it's really mixed up. And I was like, the whole thing sounded weird with the whole, yep, I'm the DoorDash driver. Yep, I saw Bryan. It's really mixed up. And I was like, what the hell? Like, that's the part I was really kind of focusing in on, those particular moments, was that whole, the way she had to keep telling us that she was the DoorDash driver. And she may be the DoorDash driver, but, and then I wondered to myself, at what point, I realized this was September, right? This arrest here. At what point I think she made the comment, and now I have to testify in this case. Is she saying, and now because it's coming up, or did she recently get approached about testifying in this case? That was my other curiosity, is when did she get approached to have to testify in this case?
Right. And I do see people talking about, Bubbly has a video she just recently posted. I know she's in the Hive a lot, so I will pull that up after this. We'll listen to it again, because I think this is the part where she says that. Devil's Advocate. So I'll play it. I'll play it one more time. But again, guys, just know I clipped this part and only enhanced this audio because the file for it is huge to do it. So I had to just pick and choose which one I wanted to enhance. So I have to do it in little bits and pieces.
My doctor includes, yes, they're all diagnosed.
Okay.
I have PTSD. I have depression. I have insomnia. My husband was murdered in front of me. He was shot 9 times. Our friend.
Where did that happen?
In Moscow.
In Moscow?
Yep.
When was that?
Before me.
Who was your husband?
Charles and Michael, you shot me with it. And then now I have to testify. So yeah, because I'm the DoorDash driver, so yeah.
You have to testify in which murder
case?
Oh.
I DoorDash driver, so
Yeah, I think that was the part where she said it's very mixed up, but maybe because of your suppression and isolating, you got it a little stomped down a little bit on there. Yeah. But that's the part where she says it's really mixed up or something like that.
Yeah, let me go over, because I saw Outcast did it, and then also Bubbly. So I just want to see.
I was curious whether or not everybody knows what the story is behind her husband that was shot 9 times in front of her.
Great point. Yes, please do tell.
It was an interesting. I looked into it, and oddly enough, Bill Thompson, the prosecutor in the Kohberger case, was the prosecutor in that case as well. And the story, from what I understand from reading the news articles, was in 2013, a friend of theirs, Somali, and her husband had a friend, a female named Erica, who was basically getting separated from her live-in boyfriend / fiance, and they stayed in a mobile home together. And she had kicked him out and was asking Molly and her husband to come help change the locks on their mobile home. But when they went to the mobile home, the guy was actually inside the mobile home and locked them out. And they busted the door down, and the guy shot him in the doorway as he was busting into the motorhome that he was in. So he shot 9 times and hit him 5 times and killed him. And again, Bill Thompson was the prosecutor. They were going for, I think, the death penalty at one point on that for the murder, but then they, I think, reduced it down because of the circumstances and the fact that they broke the door down to get into the guy. kind of thing. So I think that took the death penalty off the case. But I thought that was super interesting. Just weird details about that case. But I don't think it relates really directly, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. I mean, who knows what she was involved? Yeah. I've learned that there's never not a possibility something may be connected in this.
It's funny because like I would probably not do this on my show, but you have a lot more open tolerance to going down live rabbit holes, right? So let me go down the live rabbit hole, because again, I would not normally go down all these jumps, but the feeling that I had, I was like, God, I hate even mouthing this kind of stuff, was with the whole, hey, is this your meth in the front seat of the car kind of thing, and her surprised reaction. This is what I would say a common and known tactic that law enforcement often uses, which is that we'll drop drug charges against you or whatever the case may be if you help us. So if they knew, for example, and this is a lot of ifs, I'm just going down a crazy on the fly thing. If they knew she was the DoorDash driver and they're looking for her and they find a reason to pull her over, and then they get her distracted talking about something else and throw drugs in the car and say, hey, are this your drugs? And then it's a whole, hey, you were the DoorDash driver that night. If you happen to have seen Bryan Kohberger, wink, wink, nod, nod, this whole drug thing can go away. And you won't, and then if you're terrified because you're going to go down for a big drug charge that you didn't even know you had because they just basically put it in your car, all of a sudden you're playing ball. I think I did see him there that night. Oh, okay. Well, then maybe we can work out a deal and that drug thing will go away. So that's kind of how you can easily get somebody to testify on the stand. But anyways, that's crazy talk. I know.
Oh man, I don't think it's that crazy. I don't. I get it. Like there's certain times and places to speculate and whatever it is. For me personally, I feel like the gloves are off as far as speculation with how much speculativeness has happened from the mainstream and other people on here. I feel like we could, if they're going to go and say that, they could tell that Jack was in bed because they could tell when he rolled around by his phone.
Well, this is what bothers me the most. This is what so I've been thinking about this because it seems to me this is all brand new, this idea. I didn't know, have people been talking about her being a witness in this case up to this point? Because I didn't know she was going to testify, and maybe people have known that she was going to testify.
The DoorDash driver?
Yeah. Have we known that she was going to claim that she saw Bryan there that night until this video came out, or not?
No, not to my knowledge either.
Because what bothers me is this. Again, we see what looks like a bunch of circumstantial evidence, and it's the death by 1,000 cuts. We've got a bunch of evidence that by itself means shit. But if we stack up enough circumstantial evidence, someone's going to say there's no way that a guy could have that many things against him. And yes, I understand every single piece can be fought by itself, but at some point it gets to the point of ridiculousness, right? So what bothers me is, as a person who's trying to defend the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, I'm going nuts that I have to question now another person's story who's coming in last minute. Hey, by the way, I saw Bryan Kohberger there at the scene that night, and I can say that he was there definitively. I'm like, oh, horseshit. But then I'm going, no, everyone's going to say, devil's advocates, oh my God, dude, all you ever do is refute every single piece of information. No matter how many times somebody comes up with something new, you're going to tell me that that's wrong too. And I'm like, yes, because this kind of stuff happens in America where they have a sketchy case. And so they got to come up with more and more stuff. And last minute witnesses come in who suddenly can put their guy where they need him to be. Forced eyewitness testimony happens all the time to put people away. There's books written on people who have been convicted because somebody cut a deal and said they saw something that you didn't see to put somebody away. So it just bothers me because on the one hand, I believe that that's a strong possibility in this case. If she's coming out of the woodworks now, all of a sudden is going to testify saying she saw him at the scene, which we've never heard before, in my opinion. If that's new, it's to me, it's evidence that they got a weaker case and they need somebody to come on and bolster their case, which makes it really suspicious. But then I'm getting tired of getting beat up and kicked in the teeth all the time because, oh my God, devil's advocates, you'll have an excuse for everything that happens. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, you know what? I would say this. I don't think what you're saying even sounds that crazy. I think it's okay to speculate on it. It actually kind of, your analogy about, you can stack so much crap on top of each other. It's kind of like the movie The Big Short, where that Jared guy, if you've ever seen that, about the mortgage collapsing, and he's like, it's just like, what did he say? He's like, dog shit wrapped in cat shit, and then he throws it out, and like, it's just an amazing rant. I can't play it, otherwise I'll get a copyright ding. But if you guys haven't seen the movie The Big Short, that's a great I guess, analogy of just packaging a bunch of shit together to make it look like it's something. And the other point is there's a lot of people in the Hive saying that this could be a planted leak. I tend to believe that. Now, every single time that there's something, I guess, of this magnitude that comes out about this case, whether it be Steve G on a show, whether it be Dateline, whether it be this, no matter what it is, it seems like there's always truth hidden in that leak that eventually comes to light. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Now the leak, to what you said about now people knew this and they didn't have it. Well, again, why? Why is this such a secretive case, everybody? I've been screaming this from the rooftops. This should be the most straightforward homicide case ever. Just because there's 4 people, does that, like, obviously 4 people compared to 1 person, is it a larger homicide investigation due to the sheer amount of victims? Yes, but it doesn't change the investigation per se, as far as if it's a single perp. If it's a single perp that they have been cornering and getting on every angle you possibly could, I don't know. So.
Well, this is another point I want to make before I forget it. So people have been saying in my comments on my videos a lot lately, Devil's Advocates, you don't realize there's all kinds of stuff that they haven't shown the public. Why do you think they're going to show you? They're going to wait till trial. And I'm like, okay, I understand your logic that there may be things that we have never seen before that might be shockers in trial. There may be. But here's what we do have. We have names of court documents for years. We've been watching the filings that are going back and forth. If somebody like the DoorDash driver who's going to place Bryan Kohberger at the house has come forward before then, there would be motions filed by the defense questioning her credibility. There would be fights about it going on in the court documents. Even if we didn't know the gist of it, there should be something we could look at in the paperwork trail that showed that they were fighting over the thing. So the fact some of these things that people are saying that exist out there probably don't exist, or we would have saw the defense fighting about it. Because trust me, any piece of information they have, the defense is going to raise an objection to, and there's going to be motions filed and there's going to be fights over it. And at the minimum, we're going to see the titles of those documents and kind of suss out what's happening. So I don't believe there's some big surprising, we got Bryan Kohberger on camera, his face putting on the mask kind of thing. That's going to wait till you see the trial. It's going to happen. I'm like, if that was the case, we'd be seeing court documents filed fighting about it. Even if we didn't get the details, we'd be being able to figure it out.
Yeah, I totally agree, dude. The other part too of, like, the timing of these leaks seems very, very strategic.
Right.
It's always to reinforce the narrative. That's why I think too, so many people are drawn, at least like in our community, that it's nice to hear somebody stick up for the guy. But you can't tell me that he's got absolutely no friends. There's pictures of him out with people. There's a video on SoundCloud of him rapping. Like, there's, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff. And I just had Bubbly's chat up there. I did put this into Chat GPT. It gave it a score of 65 out of 100 for the same person. So who knows? But it says there's a moderate chance they could be the same person at different times, or what changes in appearance like aging, lighting, or makeup. But without biometric analysis or clear visuals, this is speculative. Now, I will say, if tinfoil hat is back there, I don't need to get up and get it. If this video was taken earlier, years earlier, and this is from 6/5 of 2025, and you've been on the meth for 3 years, could it age you that much? I don't know. 2-3 years? I don't know. I don't put anything past, this 8 and whatever. So the DoorDash driver has been a big talk. I don't know if it hinders or helps the case. I tend to believe that how could they be a reliable witness? I think you could easily put in front of the jury, how is this person credible? Were they using that night? Were they clearly they drive when they're under the influence?
Yeah, I will say that for the record, my gut instinct at the moment, and I change my mind as I do research, but my gut instinct at the moment is that woman, Molly, is probably my gut instinct, she is probably the DoorDash driver that night. But her story about I saw Bryan is, I think they leaned on her. I think that's shit. I think they came to her late in the game and they want to bolster their story. So they want to be able to say that somebody actually saw him in his car before he put his mask on, and they're going to try to use that kind of thing. So I kind of, my gut tells me she probably was the driver that night. We know it was an MM, and she's claiming her name is with MM, the initials work out right. But I think the timing is suspicious, and I think that maybe she's being leaned on a little bit to bolster their case.
Let's put this into perspective, Devil's Advocates. A DoorDash driver pulls up, right? You pull up, it's 4 a.m, damn near. You pull up, and you're telling me that Bryan Kohberger is just sitting in his car because maybe he knows a DoorDash driver's coming. Was he sitting in there listening to like Welcome to the Jungle to hype himself up to go commit a heinous act? And the DoorDash driver just happens to look over and see him. And then wait, Bryan Kohberger, if he's that close to the house where she could see inside of a dark car at night with a guy without a mask on or with a mask on, she can confirm it. Whether or not she's under the influence at this point, still unsure of. But not only does she confirm it, Bryan doesn't leave. Bryan then is able to go in there, not nervous, freaking unbelievably efficient, quote unquote, timeline that a combat Marine who knows him says he couldn't even do, and then get out without leaving any evidence, DNA, or anything. So you're going to tell me that he's going to continue with that? He's just going to park in a crowded parking? I don't get it.
And a lot of stuff doesn't make sense, and I don't know the orders, and I feel like people are going to kick me for this, but Gray Hughes Investigates or whatever did this whole description about how Kohberger was circling the house, saw the DoorDash driver come up, and took off basically and circled around after and basically made it sound like they didn't interact with each other at all. That somehow Kohberger saw the DoorDash driver. Then all of a sudden we've got this news story, and somebody's saying they parked side by side, but Kohberger was so focused on the house that he didn't notice the DoorDash driver sitting right next to him, looking at him in the window, kind of thing. I'm like, well, which one is it? Like, and where are these stories come from? Is it all just rumor and hearsay? Because we're all getting all spun up about whether or not the two cars parked side by side, or whether And one last thing I want to say, just for the record, I'm sure people have said this before. If you are a DoorDash driver, guess what you're probably doing? Looking for addresses. You could be flipping around your car doing 3-point turns because you're trying to locate the address that you need to go deliver to. How do we know half the videos that were suspicious activity because he's trying to find a parking place to do the killing isn't the DoorDash driver trying to look for where the hell the 1122 residence is, or whatever house they're delivering to at the time? So anyways, just however you want to spin the narrative.
Where was the DoorDash driver parked when she saw it? Where did she see it? And also just how convenient of a time for this to come out. How absolutely convenient. So I just, and also to Devil's Advocate, if people are going to come after you for critically thinking, using your brain, you explain yourself well, let me give them a preemptive clown horn for you. Don't mess with Devil's Advocate. So there you go. Because that's the whole point of, looking into these things. Like, dude, I don't know if I'm right. Half these people who claim that they're right, I would say they don't really know either, right? They could have more evidence. They could have documents that other people don't have access to. But let's be honest, this thing is clearly locked down tight as hell. And to think that anybody's going to get 100% right on this case, I just don't see it. I think that speculating and thinking through it is what pretty much everybody, that's their only option. So
yeah, this case, man, it's going to be the death of me. There's just so many theories and so much shit, and this idea that when you get to trial, it's all going to make sense. I don't know that it all is going to make all of a sudden make all the sense. The real question is, here's what's going to be super hard, by the way, looking ahead to me thinking like I'm going to go to trial, right? Is how do I put aside, this is the part that I need to compartmentalize my own brain. Because when I go to watch the trial, I'm going to have to try to convince myself to look at that case as a juror who may not have been hearing the same things that we've been hearing for 3 years or 2.5 years, right? Because they may not hear all the things that we know. And so going in there and realizing that when the jury hears a story, that's the only story that they've heard. They don't know about all the alternative stories. They won't get presented all the alternative stories. And so it's going to be hard for me to kind of put myself, I guess, if you will, in the mind of a juror and say, had they known what we know, would they have made the same decision? Or and how much is it going to be important for them to realize that some of these answers have already been talked about for years and they're just not even going to address it? How much time will they spend, for example, in court on Jack DeCour? Or will they just tell them right off the bat, hey, Jack DeCour has been ruled out as a suspect, move on, and they don't get to even cover all the history that might give somebody probable cause to think about that. So I just, it's going to be really hard.
Well, I think that's a good exercise. Let's talk through this. So if we were to only go off of information that we've been given about this case, okay, let's start with witnesses, right? Because witnesses were identified prior to the suspect in this case, right? They had Dylan and they had Bethany. Okay, have they and their stories been discredited as far as, do you think a skilled defense attorney could put reasonable doubt in the timeline and their eyewitness accounts?
100%. I've said it a million times. I can't believe they will have the balls to put Dylan on the stand, or Bethany. And Bethany's been super silent, but I can't imagine that. Apparently they're going to, but I can't believe they're going to put them on the stand, because any defense attorney with their salt's going to shred that the credibility.
Okay, and then let's talk about like the text and the 911 call, the delay.
Yeah.
Do you think a reasonable juror that gets selected and with a skilled defense attorney, they would be able to now, after the PCA and hearing about what they saw or they didn't see, would then think, okay, there's a little bit of, a sus aspect to an 8-hour delay?
So you're bringing up excellent questions, because let me say this. My gut feeling is the jury is going to think that's totally inappropriate as well. They're going to have a real problem with 8 hours going by or whatever went by. They're going to have a real problem with the fact that those girls were texting people, and it's not going to make sense to the jury. And what's going to have to happen, though, is one side's going to say, well, these girls were young, they were scared, they didn't know how to react, and will that sit well with the jury? And furthermore, the big question is, does Ann Taylor's alternative suspect explain why the girls acted that way? Because if they do, they're done. If she can paint a narrative of, hey, the girls knew the alternative suspect, and now you can understand why the girls did what they did, that's going to weigh heavy on a jury. So that's going to be the key: is who is that alternative suspect, and is it connected to the girls at all?
What if it is one of the girls?
Right.
I'm not even joking you, Chat. Yeah. I think that I don't know, but I don't think it would be. We don't know who it is. Could a reason why they're keeping it under such seal is because it's not only the state's witness, it's also the defense's alternate suspect.
Yeah. I still kind of feel like, I don't know why, because maybe people know this better than I do, but I kind of feel like Bethany is still like the wild card in this. Like she may come up with something. The reason why we don't hear from her maybe is because somebody's keeping her quiet, because she may know something and she doesn't want to come out to it until it's the last second, because because people get crucified when they come out with information. So maybe she's just keeping her mouth shut, and she's going to be forced to testify about something that's going to change everything when we hear Bethany speak about it. So who knows?
Yeah. So then, all right. So we've the delay, the eyewitness testimony. Now, let's just talk about Bryan Kohberger's motive.
Mm-hmm.
What if you were the best state prosecutor? How would you identify what Bryan Kohberger's motive is?
If you're asking me, what I would say the best case that they could come up with is the narrative, and I'm not saying it's great, but I'm saying the best one that I could come up with is to say the guy was obsessed with his professor. It's the story, the love letter to his professor. He was obsessed with his professor. He wanted to prove that he was, a master of criminology, that he could pull off the perfect murder. He was obsessed with BTK. He was obsessed with Ted Bundy, and therefore he took all the skills that he had mastered from learning how to do this, and wanted to prove that he could pull off the perfect murder kind of thing. That would be the narrative that I would try to go with. Is like, again, the incel, he hates women thing. I think that's hard to prove. I think that's sketchy as hell. They don't have the evidence for that, but they might be able to make a case with the whole he he was studying criminology because he wanted to find out how to pull off the perfect murder. It was a, you know, I think that's probably their strongest motive. And they've even tipped their hat that they think that's where they're going, that they're going to try to say this was some kind of love letter to Kathleen Ramsland.
So again, now as a competent and skilled defense attorney, I would say rather Bryan Kohberger, even without the autism aspect involved, right? Because I think a lot of people understand that, but let's say without it involved, you could say, or he's a criminology student who took his studies extremely serious and was dedicated to learning the most that he could. Who should he study then? If he's not going to study how criminals and crazy people think, well, who does he study? You have to look at real life scenarios and case studies. So I think that there's that argument. And then the final argument that I would say is no murder weapon found. How many other cases does that, you know what I mean?
Do you think it's possible? We've talked about this a little bit, but not you and I like a lot about it. So we have been told there is a knife that is likely have been hinted about multiple times that's going to be brought into the courtroom in a glass case to keep it so that people can't grab it or whatever and do anything with it. Is it possible in your mind at all that they have the actual knife, or is it just a model of the knife? Like I'm inclined to think it's just a model of the knife. They're going to use it to implant into people's memory because it'll be more effective for them to see this killer weapon in there, you know, even though they don't have it. I think it's just going to be a model. But do you think it's possible with all the hidden gag order shit that they've had the knife for a long time and they're going to bring the actual knife out in front of people?
Do I think it's possible? Well, if I'm going to say on this stream that there's a lot of other stuff that's, as I know, even as I say it, it's a stretch, is possible. I would say that maybe it's possible. Yes. Is it likely? I don't think so. I think it's going to be more of a model to give the jury a visual of the type of weapon that's actually in the sheath because they don't have the weapon.
I agree.
You know, I just find it so odd that the sheath holds so much weight.
Yeah.
It holds the entire case together.
Yeah.
So it's just been odd to me. And then I guess the other thing too that I would say too, as far as like, so right there we've named what, 3-4 things. Do you think out of 12 people, 3 of them would be like, I can't convict this guy to be put into a murder room?
Yeah, I really can't predict. I think because I'm still thinking we're going to have some shocks that are going to happen in the courtroom that we don't know about. And so I can make predictions go, if what we know today is true, and that's all that there is, I think a jury is going to have a hard time convicting. But if there's some big shock and we don't realize that they have the smoking gun evidence and they just never told anybody about it for 3 years, then obviously that's going to be a game changer in the courtroom. So I just don't know. But by the way,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
There you go.
I just read another chapter, by the way, of Howard Bloom's toilet paper document. And he had this crazy connection. Have you heard about the connection between the police officer in Pennsylvania who broke a cold case using Othram Labs, the same exact lab that he sent the profile for the DNA for Bryan Kohberger to, and that he had broken another cold case with the same Othram Labs from Texas?
No.
It's such a crazy, and I think it's just a coincidence, even though in a world you don't believe in. So there was a detective, Bryan Knoll is the guy's name, Noll. He was a trooper in Pennsylvania, and previously he had a cold case in Pennsylvania where a person had been murdered and went unsolved for forever. And they found, and it was basically somebody had cut up a body and dumped the body over a bridge, and it was meaning to hit the river below, but it ended up landing on the bank of the river instead. And so they had these chopped up body pieces. Well, anyways, they sent the officer, Bryan Knoll, Trooper Knoll, sent that DNA from the suitcase off to Othram Labs in Texas from Pennsylvania years ago. And they broke the cold case because they specialize on finding degraded DNA and turning it into a profile. So they broke the case. Then now come forward 20 years later in his career, and he's catching Bryan Kohberger with the same thing. They took the sample from the trash and they sent it to Othram Labs, and they go off and do that same squirrel thing. And I'm like, this is so weird. The same officer involved with these cold cases that he sends to Othram Labs in Texas, of all places. And that's the same place that Idaho's using. The only thing that doesn't make it super sus is like Othram Labs is one of the only, it's very few number of labs that can handle degraded DNA. That's their new specialty. It's like new technology. That's what they're specializing in, is taking very degraded DNA and building a profile out of it, kind of thing. So it just was super weird. It was just one of those, like, what are the odds on this?
That is extremely weird. And to another weird coincidence that I, again, don't believe in coincidences, is we've all seen the photos of the roommates with ski masks and giant knives. What are the odds that they're murdered the same way by some random person? And then what are the odds of what you just said, a guy who specializes in degraded DNA? Clearly not every lab is capable of doing it, as we've seen in this case with the DNA and identifying it. So, like, come on. Like, I'm not even joking you. Dude, I wonder if this Amazon shit and this Dateline stuff is to break the fall of a botched case, a misstep by LE, a psyop, a cover-up, WITSEC. God only knows what it is. Are those documentaries or docuseries that are put out, is that to have it be the fall guy for a case that is effed? They can blame it on the leaks instead of the missteps, instead of corruption, instead of cover-ups. They can say, and then let's say it does go back to one of the, victims' family members. Are you going to shame him for trying to spread awareness about the case and he leaks something sensitive? It's like perfectly tied in a knot to where it's like, nope, this case just falls off the face of the earth. We never hear about it again. It was a botched trial and the world will be left wondering what happened that terrible night on King Road. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just too easily, you could connect dots A to B to C to D. Like, I don't know. And I also don't even think, we talked about, do I think it's possible that there's a knife in that glass case? Do I think it is the knife? I'll ask you this. Do you think it's possible that this thing doesn't even go to trial still?
The whole case? No, I don't. I personally don't think it's possible it's not going to trial. I feel there's just too much of a need, right, for the public to have somebody accountable, because nobody's going to let somebody get away with killing 4 college students and just walk away. I just feel like somebody has to go down. So but I think at the bottom line is that it's going to be appealed. I think when the conviction happens, it's going to get appealed, probably either way. My gut tells me Bryan Kohberger is going to be convicted, because it's just, again, people have the need to feel better that the bad guy's been caught, and they don't really care if it's the right bad guy or not. So my cynicism tells me they're going to convict him, and it's going to be appealed, and this is going to go on for a long time, and there's going to be a retrial, and we're going to have all that shit, and we're going to have lots of stuff to talk about for years.
I can't take it anymore.
I don't know if I could.
I'm holding on to an electric fence, and all I got to do is just let go.
And I can't.
But my curiosity, I just can't. And man, I tell you what, those people, if they are setting up an innocent man to be killed by a firing squad, they themselves deserve to be shot and pissed on and burn in hell for the rest of their lives if they truly are doing this to this gentleman. Being Bryan Kohberger is a completely innocent patsy framed individual who had nothing to do with this, and they're protecting God knows who. I just think if that is the case, it's despicable and the worst possible situation you could probably find yourself in is Bryan's then at this point.
Yeah.
And if it's multiple killers, that's even crazier too. And if it's college kids, I've said, if it's college kids, that's even more scary that it's taken this long.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I feel like we're on the same page with that. I do always look forward to this next segment, Devil's Advocate, which is my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory of the day, if you're okay with me moving on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. So, how I asked you that one time? I said, what's the craziest shit that you believe in? And I think you said something like, we're all the same consciousness.
Right.
We kind of have different, we just got different meat wagons as our vehicle to it. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is like Operation Dreamscape, where essentially the government is infiltrating your dreams. And it's like, it's one of those things like, okay, we all know they look through our emails, they look through our calls, they could track whatever. is like remote viewing in dreams something that they could do? Okay, well, we know that MK Ultra is real. We know mind control research real. Netflix might play a role along with other mainstream media sources as like psyop tools to get the narrative to convince people to have them all thinking the same way. But don't forget MK Ultra, although declassified, do you think they stopped progressing it is my question to you.
Oh, no.
Okay. There's a new frontier called MK REM, literally for REM sleep. And it's pretty much that the pixel pulses are able to manipulate what our subconscious dreams about while we go into REM sleep. Now, I've talked about this before where there is a massive amount of people who talk about having the same dreams. How is that possible? Is it because we're all consuming the same content? Right? I mean, there could be something there. I wouldn't put it past it that there's studies on this shit.
Right.
So, I don't know. I guess I'd ask the chat, like, I believe I do believe in like remote viewing and all that stuff with the dreams. But here's the question. How many people in the chat have had a dream where you go and you talk to somebody else and they're like, dude, I've had the same dream? Or you have recurring dreams? Or like you should start to try to pay attention to, does that reoccurring dream happen if you watch a certain show or you go to a certain place? It's something that could be there. Dream manipulation is exactly right. And maybe they know we're all connected, to your point, Devil's Advocate. That's why I picked this one. For all we know, they could know our consciousness is one.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird, I love the crazy conspiracy theory stuff. There's a lot of craziness. Like, I forgot what it's called, but there's another phenomenon similar, which is the simultaneous discoveries, where basically there'll be a breakthrough in science in multiple places of the world at the same time. And you're like, how did these two people, and it's not that they were even working on the same research. It's like they both had the same brainiac idea at the same time. Like, hey, wait a minute. What if DNA is like a serpent and it coils? And like, how'd you both come up in two different places of the world with the same theory at the same time? It's like you're being downloaded from the universal hive mind, if you will. When society is ready to progress to the next level, then multiple people will get the message and they'll come out with it, and then we'll all move as a society in that direction. Crazy shit to think about there too.
Dude, let me ask you this, and this has nothing to do with religion or whatever your beliefs are, but do you think it's weird, like, if you talk about the where it's like we were all apes at one point and then we've evolved into humans? Why would that process of evolving stop? And do you think it all happened at the same time and now there's no people like in between that? Like, I just don't understand it. Like, so to me, like, I personally, like, I believe in God. That's my own, belief, and everyone is open to their own beliefs. But it's like, then you start thinking about the consciousness and like, is consciousness God? Is consciousness the bigger spirit, the bigger power, the voice, all that stuff? I do think there's something about a collective consciousness could really have an influence on the world. It could allow for the unanimous discoveries. There's so many phenomenons that we mark up to. Hey, science hasn't evolved far enough yet to tell us what it is, but we all already know what it is. It just doesn't have a name. It's like the sixth sense, where it's like, there's studies that are coming out where you say, like, I had a gut feeling or I felt it in my heart. There's studies coming out that like your gut has a nervous system, like separate. Your heart has, like, have you heard that?
Yeah. And again, I don't even know if I can articulate this, but I think science knows that we have a bunch of genomes, for example, that are switched off and we don't know what they do. And there are things like our consciousness may be able to evolve past a certain point, but we just literally don't have that switch turned on, if you will, in the sequencing, right? And so it makes you wonder, have we been genetically altered by something to keep certain things switched off in our genome sequence? And all it takes is for something to switch it back on, and we can elevate our consciousness and go to another level, because we're kind of like being suppressed by having certain genes turned off at the moment. And it's an interesting, because there's triggering events. People can go through a certain traumatic event, and it will express a gene that was turned off and switch it on. So it makes you wonder, like, can we manipulate human consciousness? Can certain suppressed genes switch on, and all of a sudden we'll have a monumental leap evolution in consciousness and become a different thing? It's crazy shit. I think about that shit all the time.
Me too. And then you look at like the opening ceremony. Somebody brought this up in my live the other day about CERN and how demonic and satanic.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
And you look at genes, like our DNA, right? Like if you really wanted to F the human race up, like let's say that reptilian overlords are real, right?
Mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm.
let's just go there. It sounds crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But what's also crazy is to think that we grew up in an indoctrinated school system that taught us exactly what our world is. I don't think we did. I'm not saying that I'm right in what I'm about to say, but if you mess with, like, you can mess with and manipulate other animals' DNA, right? We do that in studies. Like we can turn on genes, turn off genes, and they can do it for whatever type of studies. To think that we're not capable of being affected that way, I think is.
And I say this with the huge trepidation, because I don't want to piss off any religious folks. But if you take the biblical concept of the Bible and man and woman created in the Garden of Eden, right? And it talks about God putting man into a fog, and the question becomes could you interpret it a certain way, that a superior race literally put us into a fog, switched off a gene so that we forgot what we really are, and therefore has basically put us into a false knowledge of understanding things incorrectly, because we've been genetically altered to not remember what we really are, kind of thing. And you almost could see a narrative where that's actually said in a religious context, that some being put us into a fog and made us forget what we really are, kind of thing, switched off some genes perhaps and suppressed us, and we became lower animal forms instead of what our true nature could be. Crazy shit to think about.
That is crazy shit. I think too that while people say, oh, like, for you guys being so open-minded, how do you believe in religion? Look, I'm not saying that religion hasn't been completely manipulated and completely corrupted over the course of history. I could go down all of those rabbit holes to let you know I agree that there's probably books missing from the Bible. Who knows what's under the miles of tunnels in the Vatican, right? I could go down all those, and I have. One of the trippiest things that I've ever heard about the purpose of religion. Are you ready for this? And it's that our currency as humans to whoever the creator is our souls. And you essentially decided as a soul to sign a soul contract. If you guys have heard this, you know where I'm going with it. You sign a soul contract and you decide to come down here to learn certain lessons. Hence why some things in your life continue to come up over and over and over again until you do it right. And then once you behave a certain way, once you react in a certain way, once you have the discipline to not do something or think a certain way, whatever it may be, it tends to come up less in your life. It's like a checkpoint that's reached by your soul. Well, the theory that I heard is that religion was put in place to get the highest value of the quote unquote currency, being your soul, once it returns back to whatever realm it came from. So if you don't lie, if you don't steal, if you don't kill, if you don't cheat, if you don't do all these 10 commandments, your soul would ideally be in the perfect condition and the most valuable that it could be. And I heard that and I was like, wow, that is mind-blowing.
We really go off the. I love how we wait to the end of the night to go off the rails, because we are going off the. And here's another thing. I have, to get a little spiritual but not super spiritual about this, I have had a past where I say to my wife, why is it that some of my closest friends do certain things to me and treat me a certain way, which I feel like I shouldn't be treated. And why is it that I keep surrounding myself by people? And then when I stopped and I asked myself, what if it's possible, kind of like you say, that we created some kind of life contract? And I asked myself, what is the lesson I'm trying to teach myself? Let's say I engineered this experience for myself. Why are the people in my life that are in my life? I'm complaining about why do these people keep showing up in my life? But maybe that's because there was a lesson I was supposed to learn, and I'm not getting the lesson yet.
Yes.
And once I learn the lesson, I can move on and I'll have different friends. But apparently I'm not going to learn that lesson until I teach myself the lesson that, hey, you don't want that shit in your life. You need to move on.
Dude, I'll mess you up even more. You ever thought about then the quote of "the good die young" and how different that hits?
Mm-hmm.
You accomplish the soul contract faster.
Right.
That shit, dude, it's crazy. I mean, holy hell. And also, what else is crazy? Mama Tata just said in the chat, I am hoping I read that right. She said that this dude right here, she asked for my email for this guy. So if that is true, wow, that would be incredible. And that would be a stream that I would have so many questions for him on. And anyways, so yeah. And also too, guys, I have, where did that list go? For the Hive Mind Roundtable that's coming up on this Sunday, I will be sending an email out to everybody tomorrow. I have 3 confirmed, and I'm looking for the 4th in my inbox now. I also, not to just go on a tangent here, but Devil's Advocate real quick. My email is birdiebombshell00@gmail.com. I am not complaining about this when I say this. I'm doing this more so to let you all know. I am seeing the emails. I'm seeing the Hive Mind finds. Again, 686 of them have gone in since the last time that I've cleared the inbox. It's not a complaint. It's just, I want you guys to understand, I'm not ignoring them. Okay. I try to go back. I try to get to everybody within like a week or 2 weeks. And if I've missed you, I'm sorry. I brought in Mrs. Birdie to help. That's obviously why now I also have the Discord set up. So I'm trying to get to them is what I'm saying. But anyway.
You got an amazing problem. I would give my left testicle to have half the interaction that you have. So congratulations. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, thank you. And again, Mama Tata, it's birdiebombshell00@gmail.com. So Devil's Advocate, let's finish with this. Closing thoughts from now until next Monday. If you had to make a prediction, do you think that the DoorDash driver situation will be either confirmed or debunked within the week?
Oh, wow. Are you asking? So yes, I think we're going to have a better answer. But if you're asking, well, am I saying it's going to be confirmed, or if it's going to be, rejected? I think it's going to be confirmed that it's legitimate that she's going to testify. That's my guess. And we're gonna confirm that she is going to testify. Now, whether or not that means the story is legit or whether she got leaned on, I don't know. But I have it's either going to get proved this week that this is all a bunch of hogwash and it's just one of those rumors floating in the middle and it's not happening, or we'll get confirmation that she is indeed going to be at trial and go on the stand. But that's my guess. Yeah.
Devil's Advocate, as always, man, thank you for joining the stream. You guys, if you don't subscribe to Devil's Advocate, it is Devil's Advocate. What is the handle? Is it 24?
2024. Yeah. I can type it into the thing. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to plug my show here, but Devil's Advocates 2024.
Yep. I will pop that up on the screen right now. So that is your YouTube. It is also the same, I believe, on TikTok.
I think that's Devil's Advocates _1 on TikTok, although I haven't been as heavy. And in fact, I got to record new videos for TikTok this week. So thanks for reminding me I have shit to do.
Yeah. And I know the Hive always enjoys having you on. I enjoy having you on. Quick update for everybody. I had to move Sammy T Mafia up to tomorrow. So she will be on the stream tomorrow. I'm super excited for what she has to talk about, not only just pertaining to this case, but just also like I learned a lot about Sammy T and her background in, a previous life prior to the paralegal stuff. And dude, I mean, she had a wildly successful podcast on Patreon, where they reached the max amount of subscribers you could get to. So anyways, she has some people connected that hopefully down the road will be able to be on the stream. And with that being said, Devil's Advocate, we will be on again next Monday at 7 p.m. Central. You should join our Discord, Devil's Advocates.
It's funny you mentioned that. I saw that you advertised it down below. I will join that if I can remember to do it as soon as I get off there. Somebody said I should post my email address. So except for Gmail's mistyped, but hell. Anyways, but yes, I'll get on your Discord channel as well. So see if I can hang out over there. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hive, with that, as always, shout out to you all for tuning in. This is the best chat on all of YouTube and previously.
Hey, Birdie.
TikTok. Yeah.
Check out my new hat I just got from Cafe Press. I had my logo put on a hat.
Dude, that's dope. I love
my
that.
wife just brought it in. Hey, you just got your hat in the mail. I was going to see how it looked on a hat. So
it looks sick. I love it.
That's
love
cool.
it, man. Yo, it's awesome. And dude, no, I'm already super excited for next Monday. We will talk obviously prior to that stream, but yeah, Hive, you guys rock. Shout out to my mods. Devil's Advocate, shout out to you. And I hope you all enjoyed the stream. I hope everybody has a great rest of their Monday night. Get a good night rest for Tuesday, and I will be back on here at 7 p.m. Central.
Thanks, Birdie, man. Your show's amazing. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Cheers, everybody.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life.